All right, guys, we're less than 2 months away from Election Day. And as we get closer, one of the things most journalists are doing is taking a look at both Mitt Romney and at President Obama. Now, President Obama's record is made up of promises made, promises broken, and some promises that seem to be forgotten. Now, one of those promises was a full criminal investigation into big banks on Wall Street for the role many of those banks played in the economic collapse, and more specifically, in the widespread subprime mortgage crisis that contributed to millions of people losing their homes and an economy that 4 years later is still on shaky ground. Now, in his State of the Union this year, President Obama announced the creation of a mortgage fraud task force, a group that would hold those responsible accountable. Then, a month later, in February, there was a settlement between the government and big banks, and the president once again mentioned this crime-fighting group, headed up by New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman, and what it would be doing.
This settlement also protects our ability to further investigate the practices that caused this mess, and this is important. The Mortgage Fraud Task Force I announced in my State of the Union address retains its full authority to aggressively investigate the packaging and selling of risky mortgages that led to this crisis.
Well, let's just talk about how aggressive this investigation has actually been with Roosevelt Institute scholar Matthew Stoller. And Matthew, from what I understand, this group, which is called the Residential Mortgage-Backed Securities Working Group, didn't even have a working space for at least 3 months. No office to work out of to take on these criminals. The website for the group didn't launch until May. What is the deal here?
Well, it's not a group. It's a series of press releases.
So it's not an actual group that's doing work, even though this is something announced by the president to try to do some major things.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, in 2009, there was a whole series of sort of committees of different agencies to look into various aspects of financial fraud. But these committees are made up of people from different agencies, and they're not independent. They're just groups of people who meet occasionally. And this was a new one that was announced earlier this year, I guess about 8 months ago at this point. And it wasn't, they presented it as a new group of people with substantial resources. In fact, it didn't have office space, and they just took cases they were already working on, and when they had some sort of action in them, they would release them with press releases and say, this is part of the Residential Mortgage-Backed Security Fraud Task Force, or whatever it's called.
Matthew, you're in New York. New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman is heading up this group. This is a guy known for at least trying to get tough on some of these financial crimes in this system. Why do you think this isn't a bigger priority? Why do you think we haven't seen more people, getting in trouble or at least being taken to court?
Well, he's not the chair. There are actually 5 co-chairs of this mortgage task force. And when the announcement happened, I think Lanny Breuer, who was at DOJ and one of the co-chairs, didn't actually bother to show up to the announcement. So it was not, it was never really a serious endeavor. But the reason that no one has been held accountable for the mortgage crisis is because that's the policy of the Bush administration and the Obama administration. They believe in protecting the capital structure of the large banks and the pay packages of Wall Street executives over the property and political and legal rights of Americans.
And just to add a little bit to that, to give a little perspective to this story, kind of what you're saying, the Department of Justice had 93 investigators looking into allegations that former Major League pitcher Roger Clemens used performance-enhancing drugs and then lied about it before Congress. Now, this group, as we said, looking into fraud into all the big banks, has 55 investigators. But do you think, Matthew, do you think it was never going to do anything? That the president just sort of announced this to announce something? it seems to me that the amount of times President Obama has mentioned this, that he really believed something was going to get done.
Well, I don't know what he truly believed in his heart and soul, but, 55 people for, roughly $5 to $7 trillion in lost wealth is about $100 billion a person. Now, if you saw a $100 billion theft, like let's say Apple lost all of its cash, just disappeared, they'd probably assign more than one person to look into that. So was this serious? no, and I don't know what Obama believed, but he was absolutely lying when he said that they were going to look into the packaging of risky mortgage-backed securities, and his people were lying. And I think there's a political crisis right now because both parties essentially routinely lie to the American public about what they intend to do policy-wise in the financial and economic space. And you saw Bill Clinton at the Democratic National Convention, who is in many ways responsible for the crisis because of the financial deregulation that really accelerated under his watch. And the adulation towards him, the adulation towards Barack Obama. Romney's no better, no different. But what does it say about a political system when the public has no rights and effectively no way to enforce political and property rights of people who don't have enormous sums of wealth?
I think another thing to consider, and this is not just President Obama, politicians on both sides of the aisle say, while many of these actions that led to the financial crisis were unethical, they were not illegal. So I guess,
that's just silly. Like yesterday or a couple days ago, I read a story about Wells Fargo foreclosing on the wrong house. And they just got the address wrong, and they hired contractors to break into the house, remove all the stuff, and the people got home, all their stuff was gone, and they couldn't get an answer from anyone about where their stuff went. And Wells Fargo, after 3 months, because of media pressure, decided to issue an apology. Not remuneration yet. The bank just broke into their house, took all their stuff, and wouldn't even apologize until there was media pressure. That's breaking and entering. I don't know what kind of the people that say this, like Mary Jo White, who's a former U.S. attorney. They're just captured and corrupt. I mean, there's no question that there's crime going on right now, lots of it in the white collar space. And we keep hearing about it. But the policy of the administration, and I guess the policy of the United States, is now to protect a political class. And that means that we're no longer a democracy. And I think people have to come to grips with that.
Yeah, and we should mention regarding a lot of these cases, the statute of limitations is about 5 years for so many of them. So even if, this group was going to be tough on crime, we're at the end of the line here. A lot of them will not be able to be tried anytime soon. But I'm sorry we're out of time. Roosevelt Institute scholar Matthew Stoller in our studios in New York. Thanks so much.
Hey, thanks a lot.